To lesson 20 of client-side web development. Today we're going to talk about getting started with JavaScript programming. So we're going to look at how and why to organize your script using functions. You kind of saw that the last lesson, but we're going to go more in depth as to why we're doing it. What objects are and how JavaScript uses them, how JavaScript can respond to events, how and when to use conditional statements and loops, how browsers execute scripts in the proper order, basic syntax rules for avoiding JavaScript errors, and what JSON is and how it can be used. All right, some basic concepts. A statement is just a section of code that performs a single action. So these here show you a series of statements. The first statement creates a date object and assigns it to this now variable. This statement gets the hours from that date, the minutes, and the seconds. And then these statements create a new object and then gets the hour, minutes, and seconds. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at an example here. So here, what we've done is we've actually printed out the current time, but we use this with .javascript. And again, if I refresh it, see my time changes because now we're a couple minutes later. Then because the seconds are going to change every time, when I click through here, if I click every second, you'll see the seconds always change. So how did I do that? Let's go to this next. Here's my index.html. So what I've done here is, again, I've put everything in a separate file. So I put in this dates.js. So again, this is in the JavaScript file, so that's why I have to have JavaScript / because we're saying that it's in the JavaScript directory. So let's look at dates here. All right, so what's this date do? So here we created this print date function. And you can see we're calling the print date function in this script tag here. And then what this does is we declare a bunch of variables. The first one holds the date, then the hours, the minute, the seconds. We use, the first one creates a date object and puts it in this now variable. Then we use that now variable to get the hours, minutes, and seconds. So once we get the hours, minutes, and seconds, we can actually print those out. So we create the string here, and then we concatenate each element of the string. So we get current time, the hour, colon, minute, colon, second. So that's what displays that on our web page. And then the next thing we do is we want to get the element that we're going to print the our current time to. So if we look over in the index.html, this element is this paragraph tag because we've added the time ID to it. So if you go back here, what we've done here is we had the time element, inner HTML, and we set it to this this string here. So that's how that string, this time changes every time we refresh the page to whatever the current time is. Now, one thing we can do is we can also use the debugger to kind of step through our code. So your JavaScript code is in the sources file. So if you click on sources here, the sources section of that. And if you want to get to this, so if I close this again, if I right click and click inspect, that pops open the inspector. And again, we're going to go to our sources here. So what we really want to do is we're going to go ahead and look at that JavaScript file. So we click on it here, and here's the JavaScript file. Now the nice thing is this actually includes a nice little debugger that you can use. So you can actually debug your code. So if you wanted to step through the code, you can add a breakpoint here. And if I refresh, so that this code executes again, hit the refresh button, what happens is you can see what's going on step by step in here. So this text is already printed because it's not printed by the JavaScript. This is printed by the HTML. So now that we're at this level, if you want to step through, you just hit the second button. It's got the little arrow going over the dot here. That will step through each line. So we're going to step through each line here. And you can see if I keep, if I hover over the variable, you can see the contents of the variable. So I want to see the contents of hours. You can see it's 18, etc. So I'm just going to keep stepping through here. So you can see we have our hours or minutes or seconds, 18:30 and then 8 seconds. We're going to go ahead and step over this. So now our time string has that current time 18:38 there. And then the next thing we want to do is we want to get that time element. And finally, this last one is going to copy that current time string in the inner HTML, so the time should appear up here after I step over it. So let's go ahead and do that. There you go. And now you see that the time has gone through it. So I'm going to take this breakpoint off because I don't want it to stop every time I do this. And then I'm just going to hit resume, and now everything's going to keep working. So now, because I don't have a breakpoint and I keep refreshing, I get the new time every time. All right, so here there's a couple things you can do. A function is a number of JavaScript statements that are created as a single unit. We already kind of showed you a couple examples of functions, but some ones that are built into JavaScript. One is the alert. And the nice thing about that is if you look at our demo here, if I click on alert, I've set this up so that when you click on this button, the alert pops up here and it says hello world for alerts. And the way that I do that, let's go to the alert.html and then we go to the alert.javascript there. Okay, so let's start with the alert.html. Again, we reference the alert.js where we have our code, so you have to reference that in there. Then the one thing that we're doing with all of these is we're creating a button to kind of kick off our JavaScript. So the way this works is you can create here I just used the button element, and one of the attributes is the onClick element. And what this does is you can give it a JavaScript function that you could say, hey, whenever I click this, call this JavaScript function, this show alert JavaScript function. So the show alert is defined in this alert.js, and all it does is it calls the JavaScript alert function, the built-in one. And what that does is that pops up that alert and says hello world for alerts. That's this is what popped up that message that you saw. All right, and the same one is there's also a function for prompting the user to enter something. So let's go ahead and show that example. So here we have a prompt, and now if I click on this button, click to show the prompt, pops up a prompt, and here it's asking you to enter your name here. So I'll just put say we'll put John Doe. It's a good name to put in, and we click OK. And now it just prints John Doe, that name on there. And again, I can keep typing in a different name. Let's say Jane Doe. Click OK. And now it changed the name to Jane Doe. So how does that work? How do we do that? Again, here we used the prompt HTML here. And then we'll do the prompt.js. Show you the code in a second. All right, so the first thing we do, again, we include the prompt.js in our script so we can call it. And then we use a different button. Again, I changed the label on the button by just putting some text between the beginning and end. So that's what gives it a different label. And then here you have the onClick attribute. It's going to call this show prompt and then pass whatever prompt. So here the message I want to pass to the prompt is say enter your name. So that's the kind of directions you're giving your user. So what does show prompt do? This is my function, but it's going to call the internal function here. And here all I'm saying is, hey, I want to pass it some text. So I'm going to use this text variable, this parameter variable, to receive that text string that I'm passing it. And then I call the prompt, and that pops up the prompt. So the prompt actually kind of sits there and waits until you enter something and click OK. When you enter something, that name, John Doe, that I typed in gets copied into the name variable. And then what I do is I get that prompt. Here I'm printing everything out in this paragraph tag that has an ID of prompt. So that's why I have to look up that paragraph using its ID of prompt to get a reference to it, so that then I can copy the name that I got from the prompt to that to the inner HTML of that element, that paragraph element. All right. So that covers the alert, the prompt, variables. We've already seen a bunch of different variables. One thing that you'll notice on the variables is generally it's good practice to, if anytime you declare a variable that's inside of a function like this, to use the let keyword before the variable name. And that's just that's more of a good, and the reason for that is then these variables that you declare are local to the function, because you can actually declare a variable using var, and when you do that, what happens is that variable gets shared with the var that you declare somewhere else. So that's the main difference. So let, it kind of keeps your variables separate and safe, for lack of a better word. All right, let's go to understanding objects. Okay, so JavaScript supports objects, and like variables, objects can store data, but can store two or more pieces of data at once. The data stored in an object are called properties, and JavaScript supports three types of objects: built-in objects, DOM objects, which we talked about already, and the custom objects. Here are some conditionals. So here's an if statement. Let's see. Yeah, this particular one just demonstrates a bunch of different flows. So I'm going to go ahead and do this now. So I'm going to click to run the flow. And then let's say we had a password. And I entered the password secret. I know I'm not hiding it because this isn't really made to hide things, but I'm just typing this in for now. And it says, flashes the message, password is correct, so click OK, and then we print all this out. So how does that work? So this is the flow HTML, so we'll go ahead and click on this. All right, so let's look at this. So again, we're referencing the flow JavaScript here. We use this div because this is where we're going to print out the results of our flow. And then we just call run flow. Run flow is defined here. So here you have a password. So this is the prompting of the password. And we have a message equals, so we create this message variable. This is going to hold the message that we generate down here in our for loop. All right, so just if you've worked with other languages, this is an if statement. So what this does is when you enter your password, it's going to compare it to see if it equals secret, which is our password here. We've hard-coded our password. So here we check it. If it equals, we print, we throw an alert up that says password is correct. If not, we say it's incorrect. And then this is that for loop we go through. So this for loop is good if you want to iterate over something a certain number of times. So here we're iterating over this 10 times. So we're going to print out 10 instances of this is a test. And that's what appears on the screen. All right. Let's go back here. All right, so we talked about the if statement already. And we also talked about using for loops. Again, the way the for loop works is you start at 1. You have a counter variable that you set up, so you give it the initial value. In this case, it's 1. And in this case, we're going to say where I is less than or equal to 10. So it's going to loop 10 times. And then this tells it how much to increment, which is going to increment it by 1 every time. And we talked a little bit about event handlers. I think let's look at this event. So if I click me, it just prints hello world here. So if I refresh it again, it disappears. If I hit click me, it appears. Again, this one doesn't do much because what we do, and I don't want to save that. Yeah, let's go to events here. Event.js. So here you have an event. So again, we point to the events JavaScript and we call print hello. This is a very simple JavaScript program. All it does is it creates a message called hello world. It gets that target document. I named the ID of this paragraph target here. So it gets a reference to that paragraph element and then it prints it out, the message to the inner HTML of the target element. All right. And here's just another example of using an event handler. Obviously, I did on clicks on the buttons, but you could do a lot of other things. You can have a mouse over, so if you hover your mouse over an image, it does something. Next we're going to talk about execution. So you can have one or more set of script tags, external JavaScript files, and any number of event handlers. So the order of execution of the scripts can be the same or different. So script tags in the head element execute first, then the ones in the body, and then event handlers are executed when the event happens. So when you click a button or hover over an element, that may execute an event. The best practice is to have as few script tags as possible in your document. So you at least need one because you always want to reference the external script. But you should have at least one there. Okay, some syntax rules. Case sensitivity. JavaScript keywords such as for and if are always lowercase. Built-in objects such as math and date are capitalized because it's a general rule that object names usually always begin with a capital letter. And that's just by convention. The DOM object names are usually lowercase, but their methods are camel-cased. And the variable object and function names include uppercase, lowercase numbers, and the underscore character. There's reserved words, so variable names can't be a reserved word, such as if or for, so you can't call a variable if or for because that's a reserved word for those JavaScript statements. Spacing, JavaScript ignores space, blank space, or white space. Comments, there's two types of comments. There's the double slash comment, and then there's the multi-line comment, which is slash asterisk and asterisk slash. So you can begin a comment in the middle of a line, and then you can add it to the end like it looks like there. Best practice for JavaScript, you want to use comments liberally because you always want to explain, especially when the code gets very complicated. You want to use a semicolon. This should be at. the end of each statement, and use only one statement per line. Use external JavaScript files whenever possible, which I've kind of shown you. Avoid being browser specific, and then keep JavaScript optional. Use progressive enhancement. The last thing we're going to look at is JSON. We'll discuss what it is and what it does. So here's a demo of our JSON. So I'm going to click on here. And let's say when I click on this to print the address, we click here, and then it prints this address here. So how does this work? Let's go on to our json.html here. Okay, so again, we're referencing the json.js file. We create a div, and we give an ID, a target, and then we have a print address. So the address will be printed on in this div here. Okay, so this right here is JSON. So here we get our target element. That's where we're going to actually print our address. And then we create this address object, but this address object looks a little different. This is actually an object with multiple elements in the object. So here we have a street, city, state, and zip. So the nice thing about it is because it's an object, we can use the dot notation to get each element. So if we wanted to get the street, this will pull in that one main street there. Same thing for city, it'll put all in Waterbury, etc. And that's why we had everything outputted in this manner. The common use for JSON is to exchange data in a string format. So a lot of APIs use JSON to send data back and forth. So there's something to be aware of. Okay, a couple things with understanding JSON. JSON is easy to read. It's simple in concept. It's just key value pairs. JSON is largely self-documenting, and you can create and parse JSON quickly. JSON is a subset of JavaScript, which means no special interpreter is necessary. JavaScript can basically read it natively. All right, so that's all we have for lesson 20. Until next time, thank you.